Ruchira. Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the FICCI's program on transforming Indian agriculture by empowering FPOs. My warm welcome to all the distinguished panelists as well, and also the participants. We all know the government has taken, a lot of steps to revitalize agriculture, and FPO is kind of a focal for this entire development, and a lot of stress is being laid on the development of FPO framework in the country, and they've been included also in the agri infrastructure, etc. So I think that's a very positive move from the government. Fiki has, of course, supported Ministry of Agriculture and SFSC in creation of these farmer institutions, and we've done several activities together in the past. And at Fiki, we strongly believe that this is the right approach, and we really want to make some impact in the agriculture sector. Most important characteristic of which is marginal farming and small and highly fragmented land holdings, which is where FPOs have to play a very significant role. And I'm very pleased to inform you that Mr. Pravesh Sharma, who is also our advisor for the agriculture sector, has kindly agreed to chair the special task force on FPOs. And we do hope to do a lot of good work under his guidance here. And so while we do talk of scaling of FPO ecosystem, the access to capital and markets and capacity building has remained an enduring challenge. And this is something which we need to overcome. And I think one of the points we will definitely take up in the committee set up under Praveshji. And we are committed towards the development of this ecosystem. And I'm happy to inform about the two recent initiatives that Fiki has taken in the sector. One is that we've come out with a paper on addressing the multidimensional impacts of COVID-19 on FPOs just a few months back, and the paper is available on the website for everybody's reference. And if there are any inputs, happy to receive those as well. Also, Fiki has recently given awards to the best agri startup FPO partnership. So this was just a beginning, to try and recognize the work being done through the FPO ecosystem. And we all know the government of India has launched a scheme for formation of 10,000 FPOs across the country, and a good budgetary provision has been provided under that. So I think we need to also deliberate on how this can be well utilized, and awareness also among the new partners and multi-pronged efforts around parallel tracks will be required, of course, to achieve this vision. So today's interactive session organized with NAFPO have representatives from FPO, promoting organizations and industry. And these are all very important pillars for the FPO ecosystem. We have over 450 participants who have joined in today, shows the interest in this area. So with these words, once again, a warm welcome to everybody, and thanks to NAFPO for supporting this initiative of ours. So with these words, may I now invite our Secretary General, Mr. Dilip Chinoy, for his welcome address. Over to you, Secretary General.
Thank you, Jyoti, and Mr. T. Nanda, former Secretary, Government of India, Mr. Kesavan, the Chair of the Agricultural Committee, Mr. Paresh who is the Sharma, who is the Chair of the Task Force on FPOs. Very good morning to all of you, and a very warm welcome to all the delegates who are here this morning. It's a very important landmark event that we are actually focusing on transforming Indian agriculture by empowering FPOs. As Jyoti mentioned, FICCI accords a huge priority to the development of the FPO ecosystem. And this year, we actually formed the special task force on FPOs. Extend a very warm welcome to Mr. Pravesh Sharma to this virtual conference, and also thank him for chairing the task force. We understand that this idea of creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem for farmers has gathered momentum in the last decade, and when you were leading the SFAC, I'm sure with your chairmanship, we will see FICCI task force on FPOs putting considerable effort into the development of the FPO ecosystem. And really the proof of the pudding would be if we can actually exceed the numbers that have been set by the Honorable Prime Minister in the budget. I'm sure 10,000 is a conservative number. We need to actually look at not only creating more FPOs, but also empowering them by enabling them to be fully functional and effective. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Mr. T. Nanda, former Secretary, Government of India. Sir, in a recent article in the Financial Express, you have mentioned that FPOs succeed when producers with a common economic interest organize themselves to achieve economies of scale. And I think scaling and productivity are two huge challenges in the agricultural ecosystem that we need to address. Also, while the broad contours of the design of the FPOs are similar, outcomes in terms of the performance vary significantly. Many FPOs are facing multiple challenges at different stages of growth. And as you had mentioned in your paper, FPOs need help along the way from registration to market access, from actually enabling them to begin and then enabling them to scale and grow. In this context, the announcement of the One District, One Product approach in the Government of India, expansion of Operation Green and Agri-Infrastructure Fund will certainly create opportunities for entrepreneurship and innovation at the FPO level too. These are extremely positive initiatives that have the potential to catapult the FPO ecosystem into the next level. I think the FPOs have a big role to play not only in building the social economic resilience of farmers, but also in achieving several sustainable development goals going forward. At FICCI, we are committed to the development of the FPO ecosystem under the chairmanship of Mr. Kesavan, and I'm sure the members of the FICCI National Agriculture Committee will come forward to support this initiative. I believe that even the state committees have a great role to play in this, and we look forward to actually getting all the state offices of FICCI working with the National Agriculture Committee to expand this initiative. I would like to also welcome all the 450 plus delegates who registered today. A very special thanks and extremely cordial welcome to the 15 speakers who are here to brainstorm and develop a roadmap for the growth of the FPO ecosystem. I would also like to thank NAFPO for helping us in putting together this program. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you, Mr. Keshavan, and thank you, Mr. The Chairman of the Task Force, Mr. Pravesh, for your leadership in this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chinoy. Thank you, Secretary General, for narrating, some FICCI initiatives in this area. We now move to Mr. T. Nanda, the former Secretary, Government of India. Sir, we would be very privileged to have you with us today to get your views on this area, and given your huge experience in the sector, we intend to gain a lot from your views as well. So over to you, Mr. Nanda, for your special address, please.
Thank you, Fiki, and thank you in particular, Mr. Shenoy, Mr. Keshavan, and of course, Pravesh. It's always a pleasure to participate in a FICCI seminar related to agriculture, but today my reason for joining is not that. My reason for joining is my strong belief and commitment that FPOs are the future for agriculture in this country along with AgTech. And therefore, what I'm going to say may be a bit controversial, but that comes from my commitment and my belief. And therefore, while all of you have a right to disagree, I would request that you ponder those points over. My first point is that markets have been changing, and post-COVID market has changed very drastically. And that's very important because I come from Dr. Korean School of farmer organizations, and therefore I believe that if Bombay market didn't exist, Anand could not have existed. Therefore, I go from that principle. And how is the market changing? I had written that piece saying that the market is becoming more phygital. And I defined it as digital commerce and digital finance with physical delivery. Now, this is a new kind of opportunity where there are large number of fintech startups, there are large number of e-commerce startups, but how many of them can really physically deliver? It's probably the strength that FPOs need to use in the new market to deliver on a phygital platform. The other segment of the change in market relates to the food and food ingredient segment. In fact, post-COVID, food safety has suddenly acquired a larger dimension than what FSSAI would have us believe. Many of us would go beyond FSSAI norms and look for food safe kind of issues. When I say food safety, I'm going a little beyond what FSSAI would say. And add to that the quality. And quality is, in addition to food safety, there are inherent characteristics of a product or a material that we are looking for in the food system. I remember 20 years ago when I tried to market turmeric latte, there weren't takers because, and even 10 years ago, there weren't many takers. Suddenly, Amul is able to sell haldi doodh in large quantities because of COVID. So the wellness part of food is becoming a large ingredient of the food market. The other interesting aspect, which I am sure market experts from ITC or companies like that would agree with, is that home cooking has led to a bit of premiumization of the food ingredients and food products. So how do we create premium products if you use the wrong inputs at the farm level? So FPOs, again, from my experience, I always say there are certain products which have to be inherently clean and good, and there are certain parts which can be cleaned out. So the cleaning out is a limited opportunity. Clean products is a much larger segment. And the other bit that very interestingly has come up in the last 1 year is a huge preference for farm to home delivery services. And this is something that, I've been trying to develop something about that. Probably at a later stage, I'll have something more to say. So also, even food processors and big retailers, with all the hype around the farm laws, they are not going to open branch offices and procure raw materials. I think most of them would use some intermediary or other. And I'm sure they would be very happy to deal with FPOs if there is an assurance of quality and assured supply. So there is this market connect that I think FPOs need to see and see this new opportunity to deliver to various segments of the market, be it a processor, be it a retailer, be it retail itself, in a way in which quality and food safety are assured. The other area are input providers are also looking for an input plus extension services. Would FPOs be willing to bite that in terms of getting better inputs for its farmers and better extension services would be a question that we can probably ask. Of course, the other area that I did participate with FK and I am fond of is the AgTech FPO Connect, which I think is going to be the strongest bond that we can develop over the next 3 to 4 years, because the way AgTech is progressing and the way FPOs are progressing at the other end, there is a lot to learn, gain from a synergistic relationship between the two. Now, on 10,000 FPOs, I am a little skeptical. I don't share the same enthusiasm that government has, because there are already 7,000 FPOs on the horizon. Most of them are sub 1 crore turnover FPOs. If my information is correct, Pravesh can correct me if I'm wrong. Now, it's good optics for government to have a large number of FPOs. But if I were to do this and looking from a farmer's thing, I would think that size and profits matter to farmers than the number of FPOs. How does it matter to me as a farmer whether there are 20,000 FPOs in the country or 10? I would rather have one Amul than have 10,000 FPOs. So my own take is that while that plan, and I have written fairly critically about that scheme. It's really a bureaucratic maze. Whether that will get changed or not is a different issue. But I think we should take it with all the caution that it requires, that we shouldn't sacrifice as an FPO your own market sense of direction in the market, your own strength in trying to fit into the guidelines of the government. I would rather give up that money than sacrifice the marketing and fundamental principles of production that the FPO is strong at. But definitely take as much as you can get, but don't lose focus on what you are setting out to do, because this scheme comes with a certain number of risks which you should be aware of. The other question that I need to ask the FPOs is, I always hear this, that FPOs need to federate. Fair enough, as a principle, there's nothing wrong with it. But what exactly does federate mean? Are we looking at something like, again, my favorite example of GCMMF, which is Amul? Now, GCMMF doesn't own, recently they have forayed into it, but doesn't own many production facilities. In fact, they're a very small production part of the entire system. They are essentially the marketing and technology arm of its constituents. And the reason why Amul sells is one brand across so many milk federations and milk unions is because they believe in the power of that brand. So I honestly believe, and I'm sure the marketing experts on the panel would agree with me, that 17,000 FPOs cannot create 17,000 brands and survive in the market. So if you really want to create a brand and fetch value, I think we need to look at how to work together. I'm not even saying federate. How do we create a platform in which you work together? How do you create a value sharing formula across FPOs and try and get, because to me, most FPOs are small, and that's really the problem. How do you scale up? How do you get value in the market? You need to be strong presence in the market if you really want to capture value. Because ultimately, what is it that we are aiming at? We are aiming at a higher value capture by farmers. And that's the bottom line on which we are going to work. Now, if you're going to work on that, I think we need to work with that in mind. And very often I hear this, that the biggest problem, apart from market, that FPOs face is the compliance burden of the company law. I think all of us who are on any board of any company know that the compliance burden is quite huge. It requires a huge amount of paperwork, and I wish and I hope that anyone, NAFPO, SFAC, NABARD, NCDC, anyone who is in the system would help them in easing that compliance burden, ensuring that they really comply, because it's not an easy thing and a cheap thing to do. The last bit is something that many of you may not like, but I need to say this. Very often many of the original FPOs and cooperatives were promoted by NGOs. And NGOs have a way of thinking, and I don't blame them for it, because that's the way they should be. But NGOs do not understand markets. Most of the time, they do not understand markets very clearly. Even if they do, they have an ideological vision of the market, which is, more state-controlled market, more state-driven markets, etc. For FPOs, I think we have to think as business organizations. And business organizations have to understand markets. And markets will exist. Markets are necessary both for consumers and for producers. And there's no point in trying to blame the market or trying to say, okay, government should do this for us, and government should buy from us, and government should procure from us. That's okay, for a limited purpose, it makes sense. For a limited set of commodities, it will make sense. But government cannot be an efficient marketeer of even a set of key products. Forget about all of them. So I think the understanding of the market and learning to use the market effectively for your own good is going to be the key. And I come back to that thing again, that markets and marketing is going to be the big challenge before FPOs. And this is where I think a lot of advice from people in FICCI who have understood the markets would help the FPOs in the long run. And we would, I think, look at, a lot of lessons that we can learn from Amul, which is probably the best model that we can think of in the farmer collective space. And there are, of course, other lessons which we can learn. But to me, I see a great future of FPOs, which is for sure. I see a great value in connecting with AgTech, and I see much greater value in understanding markets and FPOs working together to address the advantages of getting into that market and getting a better value for themselves than doing much more on production and productivity, which you are good at. In fact, production and productivity are natural to you. It's markets which might baffle you a bit. And that's where I think you would probably want to focus a little more and learn a little more and work together either as a network or as a federation or as a group or as an individual FPO to capture the best value for your farmers. Thank you very much for your patient hearing and listening. I'm sure I provoked you sufficiently to lead to the next discussions on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your guidance on the subject, and you do have, I think, some very significant views which we will take into account while doing our deliberations in the committee and otherwise, and even during the session. Mr. Keswan, may I now invite you for your remarks, please? Mr. Keswan is the chairperson of the FICCI Agriculture Committee, apart from running a very successful tractor company, which is TAFE. So, Mr. Keswan, over to you for your remarks, please. And also thank you for always supporting us in all our initiatives. Over to you. Sir, you are on mute.
Sorry, this is the problem. This is the problem of habit. So we tend to mute it as a normal fashion. Okay. Hope you can hear me now.
Yes,
Yes,
loud
sir,
and clear. Absolutely.
Thank you. So thanks a lot, Jyoti, I think, for the kind words. And if I remember the speakers before me, I think between Dilip, yourself, and Mr. Nandakumar, I think you have covered quite a few very important points. Mr. Nandakumar actually said, I am going to give you some areas where it's going to be a little provocative. I'm going to add to the provocation because I think it's a great group we have here. And I think some of these answers has to come out from this group led by Mr. Parveshji, who has got a lot of hands-on experience. So before I start into mine, I'll say, let me welcome all of you once again. I like to begin with assurance that FPO has been always close to the FICCI National Agricultural Committee's heart, and for it, it's a priority agenda. And as an individual, I genuinely believe that this is very important for the long term. We always believe that there's a huge potential for the preparing FPOs an effective tool for transforming Indian agriculture. See, we talk about numbers of FPOs, 7,000, 8,500. It's a positive sign, but I have a very genuine concern because I have been working with FPOs. I've been really working to FPOs to see, is there any way we can actually involve them, not only for the benefit of the business, but also the benefit of FPOs? Is there, how do I change the way they look at it? So I think one of the questions we always, what is the measure for an FPO? This is a question again and again that's coming to my mind. Is it just a registration as a number? Or is there an active FPO measurement? How do you consider the FPO as successful? How do you ensure that every FPO member gets involved? See, unfortunately, if you look at it, FPO, right or wrong, we may say that it's an organization, but any farmer organization is very loosely held. There are some people who are maybe the running member, you may create a CEO, all the thing happens, but everything is still a very, very loosely held system. And we know as an organization side that sometimes you need decisive decision making and direction seeking. And now, how do we bring this into the FP? Honestly, I don't have an answer because when I work with them, I find it very difficult to get them to move as in unison like an organization move. And my worry is if FPO doesn't move like an organization, well said by Mr. Nandakumar, they don't achieve the success. So how do you make that happen? Second thing is that we need to tie them with the value chain, whether the input value chain or output value chain. And unless they themselves really are willing to get into that, it is going to be a little more difficult. So this is one area I never understood. How do once after a FPO gets created and registered, what are the steps to ensure that they are performing well and that really works well on a long term? It's a problem with the startup, but startup, if you really look at it, is still run by one or two individuals. But FPO is very broad spread. So this is one area. Second is we need to create a mechanism. Now, who will intervene? Is it the government need to intervene? Is it private bodies like Fiki can intervene? Who will course correct an FPO to success? See, normally we talk about scaling up. Before scaling up, I have a bigger problem. Scaling up is only after you achieve a consistent success as a small body. Today, I find that FPOs are struggling. I'm not talking about a lot of FPOs are struggling to receive a consistent success as a small body. Then come scale up. I'm sure that some of these things will be covered when Shashikant is going to talk. The other area is this, today government is looking for a support of FPOs for 5 years. But unless there is a clear measurement and a structured way of looking at it, any support is not going to work. So this is one area probably we have to come in and say, this is why we are going to measure it. This is going to be the rate of success. Then comes again a question. If the FPO doesn't measure up to, do we just knock them out of the FPO? What do you do? Or just keep them as a number saying that, oh, from 8,000, I went to 10,000 to 20,000. I don't think that's not the purpose. I know it's all controversial questions, but considering this kind of people we have, there's one great thing, with the digital transformation can actually help managing FPOs in a much bigger way. So I think some of the monitoring methodology, hand-holding, ensuring that the right FPOs grow, the FPOs who need support are given, the FPOs just can't really work out, we'll have to see what to do with them. All this need to be moved digitally. Otherwise, I think we will talk about FPOs, which is a very important area, but you will not see the success rates. This is what actually has been worrying me, especially when I've been on the ground to work with FPO and found that I'm finding it difficult in many areas to move them. Third is that, the technology is where I am really looking for. And third thing is that, we have put 1 lakh crore in agricultural infrastructure. Ideally, FPO should be able to do this and take benefit of it. Here I come back to Mr. Nandakumar. See, unless you create a brand, maybe the idea is one district, one brand. One district, one produce, one brand, and everybody falls in with that. It's a lot of work, homework to be done. Otherwise, fragmented bands don't really give large groups. One more request I had with the government, which I'm going to take it very, very strongly, is that a lot of the subsidies what being afforded, like custom hiring center subsidy, some of the subsidies which you collectively give for give for seeds or fertilizers, can you now start focusing to FPO? Can you identify FPO as an entity and start focusing some of the subsidies to FPO? This may be another way that you can actually help the FPO. At the same time, FPO will have big farmers, small farmers, all kinds of farmers. So unless you start helping the real small farmers, some way of getting these facilities through short, small value loans, I call it lend to rent kind of a loan, you will not have a level playing field for the big farmers in LPO and the small farmers in the SPO. And if you don't have a level playing field, that FPO will not have the same language to talk. There will be different forces pulling them in the different direction, leave out the politics, which also enters when the FPO becomes a little bigger. So these are my worries. These are my concerns. I've expert always everything what has been burning within me, because for me FPO is a great initiative. An FPO actually can create a large amount of contract work if you have a strong marketing based system upfront helping them. Same way, great support from the back end for getting the right inputs, right mechanization, right storage, everything. But it's a larger ball game. So considering FPO has been so much focused nowadays, I hope this group, which is going to sit down and talk and sit down and analyze, and the group under Mr. Parveshma is going to roll out a scope And with Shashikant Singh sitting there, give us his thought process. I genuinely hope and pray that we find some kind of a solution in which FPOs is not only created, but it is handled, monitored, ensured that they do success, and we ensure them that how to scale up. Difficult task is not easy. So let me stop here and let me hand it back to Jyoti, but just promising one thing that FICCI and FICCI National Agriculture will always be there to do any kind of support to see the FPOs are successful. Thank you.
I can see the passion from your delivery, on your belief in the system. So I'm sure with your leadership, we will definitely do something, and with Praveshji there. So I think all these things are very, very important inputs for our work going forward. So thank you so much, Mr. Keswan. May I now invite Mr. Shashikant Singh, Director PwC, for presenting the paper that we have done on this subject. So Shashikant, over to you. Mr. Shashikant?
Thank you, Jyoti. Thank you so much. And good morning to all of you. Probably, I have heard all speakers, and I can say one thing. It's all provocative thoughts are converting into passion. And believe me, we all are not propagated, but we all are excited. And the kind of discussion we are going to have during the day and this 1.5 hour will show you that how excited we are. And probably we are trying to see what all opportunities we have with this FPO segment. And of course, we have a lot of challenges, but can we convert those challenges into an opportunity to see how best FPO can be integrated into agribusiness model? So let me quickly project the presentation we have. Is it visible now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. So, this is so I am Sashikant Singh, director with PwC, and I lead few transformation assignments with agri and allied sector. And from PwC firm side, I can say that we are investing a lot in FPO space, not only from in terms of the opportunity for us, but also as a what opportunity FPO is creating for the entire agribusiness segment. So coming quickly on the agenda of the presentation, this is the three-part we have built. We'll first talk about briefly about how the FPO ecospace has developed, followed by what are the key ecosystem challenges and support areas FPO need, and those are very much, I would say, covered by our earlier speakers. And then how well this nowadays the ecosystem is there to support FPOs to get to a more, I would say, optimal fashion. So I will be making this presentation with my colleague Sirish. Coming quickly to the first part in terms of before talking about this 10,000 FPO story and push we all are talking about, but what happened before that? So let me capture few key points like what are the established fact nowadays. I am just keeping aside what are the challenges on the FPO segment. I'm just talking about what are the positive side of it. So till now, about 8,000 odd plus FPOs are there registered, working, of course, in a different shade of success. One thing is very much established that FPO gives you a power of aggregation, be it the input side of fertilizer or pesticide or fungicide, or the output side in terms of procurement. One thing is clearly established. If we are able to work with FPOs, we are getting to leverage the power of aggregation. Similarly, it is giving you efficiency of direct linkage. And we talk the direct linkage in all forms, and all the recent policy level changes are also pushing direct linkage in some way or other. There are other sub segments are being developed in terms of credit support being given by banks, NBFCs, fintechs to support FPOs in that ecospace, and of course the related advisory support ecosystem. So this I'm mentioning because there are other sectors which are also evolving to support this FPO business model. there are enriching, I would say, experience for us in last 10-15 years in terms of what we have learned, and probably would like to avoid those mistakes in the next phase of 10,000 FPOs, which we are talking about. And then finally, what now it is emerging is FPO is somehow taking at a core space for many business model, and that's why I have kept the title of this slide as there were phases in last 10-15 years where FPOs were aligning to the existing business model. But believe me, basis my interaction with many private sector participants, now the business model of private sector are being influenced by FPOs. So that's a, I would say, great change which we are observing. Going back, in the next slide, this is just a briefly a storyline how FPO story developed in 2002. We started with a amendment in Companies Act, then registration in Chandigarh, MP, followed by SFSC become the nodal agency to push it. That was the phase one. So 2012 onwards, there was a huge push in this domain. Before in last year, we have started the 10,000 FPOs. But what are the key, I would say, takeaways in this is still the lot of more than 50% FPOs are being registered in last 3 years. And if you look at the first 10 years of FPOs journey, very few FPOs were registered. And still, till now, the concentration of FPOs more than 50% are in few states. So while this is good in some sense, but probably if you look at the diversification of our entire agribusiness segment, more spread and a more balanced spread need to be kind of created somehow. Last 12-13 years have also given us a very clear thought in terms of what kind of challenges FPOs are facing and probably where they are not able to do good. And that's what those things were very well captured by our previous speakers. We have also somehow mentioned few of those in all their specific stages, like what are the kind of challenges in incorporation, what kind of challenges they face in share capital, what is the governance issue, are they able to get the working capital and credit requirement, are they able to manage their entire organization well, are they able to do their compliance requirement on time. So these are few things which we also observed, and probably is a kind of a big challenge which need to somehow address to make it this in a better manner. But coming now, what has changed now, and why we are talking about with all those challenges, we are still talking with about FPOs. And believe me, FPOs are reached into a stage where we may like or may not like, but we cannot ignore this model. So that's why I am again pushing from all my conviction is there still is an inherent lot of potential, and if it is nurtured well, we can transform this agribusiness sector using this FPO positives. So this briefly captures the left side of the slide is capturing what are the salient feature of the relevant new scheme and what kind of a specific focus are coming in nowadays. So we're talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, some scheme designed for supporting FPOs. We are talking a lot about can we do some collaboration between FPOs, MSMEs and startups. There is a huge potential there. And then finally, what kind of play tech, digital and credit can play to support this entire ecosystem so that these FPOs are not merely working as a producer companies as a number game, but they are acting as a sustainable business units. And that's the core, that's the theme of our presentation, which we'll be detailing in coming slides. So now I request Shirish to take forward this ecosystem strengthening part. Shirish, over to you.
Thanks, Sashi. So rightly said, this is the right. Am I audible?
Carry on.
Yeah, thanks. So rightly said, a lot of factors and lot of ecosystem support services are very much required to standing for the standing of these FPO institutions as an institutions. We understand that the basically this we see that the basically four critical factors are there. That is policy environment, technology management support systems, the credit support systems, and the marketing. Now, if these four factors are there to help out these FPOs, we don't see that these FPOs cannot come up as a viable and sustainable institutions. Professional management support systems are required. Most of these FPOs earlier, they have struggled a lot because they don't have these professional manpower support systems. Financial institutions, now they are coming up with a lot of schemes and support structures, modified provisions for these FPOs. So somehow these things are, these supports are now coming to these FPOs. But the most important thing is the policy environment. Right now, we can see that these various factors culminate to these six different components which can create these institutions. We all know that this production support, where these FPOs and these members, they can get this technology and the knowledge on better technology, the better transfer of package of practice and other things. Then the support related to market linkages. A lot of players are coming up with who want to work with these FPOs and help them out in buying their produce or supplying their inputs at the better prices at the farm gate. Then the financial linkages support. In last 5 to 10 years, we have seen that a lot of efforts has gone into that. Then technology supports. Uh, a lot of startups, they are now coming up with a lot of ERP solutions, database, CSC management toolkits. These things are very much required to help these FPOs. And then the institution supports. People like ITC or Bear or the lot of other players, they are now willing to go hand in hand and help these FPOs and work together for the better market linkages support system creation at the field level. Yeah. So now if we try to understand what are the various critical factors which can ensure the sustainability of these institutions, we have seen that a lot of government schemes, support systems and provisions has been created in last 1 decade. It all started with SFSC coming as a nodal agency to support these institutions, NABARD creating a lot of provisions for these FPOs in terms of equity grant support, credit guarantee funds, venture capitals. And now we see that all these things coming together under the centrally sponsored scheme of 10,000 FPOs, where this NPMA has been established, RIs are now called as CBBOs, that is cluster-based business organizations, giving that thought that these institutions, they should merge or they should associate with other organizations who can provide different sectoral services to these institutions. So if all these support services are there, apart from that, recently post COVID, we have seen that a lot of traction has been brought into creation of this infrastructure development, because we see that somehow we need to come out of this production led model to the marketing, as along with this marketing, this post harvest management and creation of infrastructure. So this 1 lakh crore infrastructure fund has been now created, and we don't see that these FPOs or the community based institutions, PACs or the agriculture entrepreneurs, they cannot avail these. This all has been created to create that infrastructure, that support structures through which they can provide better quality to those private players. They can enhance the quality of the produce and help these consumers to avail all those things on time. Apart from that, we have seen that top to total means the support from tomatoes, onion and potatoes has now been extended to all the fruits and vegetables. And in last 3-4 months, we have seen that a lot of FPOs, they came forward to avail these benefits. If this is coming up, then a lot of FPOs, they can create their own infrastructure at the field level. This will help them out. So these private players, they have a lot of scope now to work together with these FPOs. Say, for example, a lot of data-oriented market informations are required for these FPOs. These FPOs, they need to understand what kind of produce, which quality of produce they need to grow. So there creates a scope of contract farming or the buyback agreement arrangement kind of things. Under this clusterization approach, these FPOs, they can come together, form a cluster and create some kind of traction into that. And this cluster level approach can help these private players to buy from several institutions together. FPCs, then they can help out through these warehouse receipts or the other innovations. A lot of players are coming up in helping them out in through cost sharing models, where a lot of infrastructure can be created with the help of private players. So all these things can be created with the help of these private players. And now we feel that this is the right time to get into that. To sum up, we can see that the now the entire system needs to be a bit tweaked to help these institutions to come up with a proper plan and help them out in creating this viable institution. Say, for example, now banking system, we have seen that a lot of banks initially they were not able to do that. But now a lot of modification in the existing loan plans has been developed. A lot of digitization systems has been created. Few more innovation models will be required to help the various strata of FPOs as per their own requirement. A lot of supply chain players, they need to get into the system. They need to create some kind of infrastructure. They need to create buyback arrangements for this in the cluster approach for these FPOs. Then the skill is one critical area. Uh, in recent years and in coming years, we will be requiring a lot of human resource. We will be requiring a lot of barefoot CEOs, barefoot staffs who can help directly with these FPOs, who can stay there at the block or district level and help these FPOs to come out of the various issues and help them in marketing kind of things. So a lot of training, capacity building things will be required. Apart from that, we need a lot of support provide support to these institutions in strengthening their governance, because that is the area where these 10-15 board of directors, they need to understand the entire domain, their capacity need to be built, and then they need to take the responsibility of the business too. Now, currently we see that in most of the places, these CEOs are taking responsibility of that. But somehow we need to understand that the board of directors, they should also come forward and start taking these responsibility. And apart from all those things, the policy standing, there has been a lot of movement in terms of bringing policies, FPO policies, but still a lot of things will be required. If these FPOs can be treated equivalent to the MSME, or the lot of CSR funds can be roped into this FPO in terms of creation of infrastructure, that will be very good. Yeah. So again, I request Sasi to sum up all those things.
Thank you, Suresh. So this is what we have briefly captured. We know this is put in a very crisp way, and all verticals can be discussed in detail, and that's what we look forward to discuss in next 1 hour. What in brief I wanted to say that in this Atmanirbhar Bharat push for agriculture and agribusiness sector, we see FPOs to become Atma of that push if that can be nurtured and supported well. So on that thought, we are ending our presentation, and I would like to take this opportunity to also thank all our speakers in inaugural session. And now I request Mr. Parvesh Sharma, who is heading this FPO task force in FICCI, and who is the founder and CEO of Kamtan, and probably one of the expert we have in industry who have experience of government in terms of supporting FPOs, who have experience of from a private side to how to work with FPO, and who has also done a lot of supporting role for FPO ecosystem development. So over to you, Mr. Sharma, for taking forward the next session.
Thank you, Shashi, for a very, very useful, very comprehensive overview. Lots and lots of covered. And very speakers, Mr. Nandakumar and Mr. Keshwar session for laying down most impressive, I would say, landscape overview for us. I could not have hoped for two better speakers, one representing a very deep experience in the government, and one, of course, hardcore private sector, but very FPO friendly, I would say, corporate. So I think we have a task cut out for ourselves. I'm going to use this session. I don't want to make any opening remarks because I believe that the representation on this panel will really help us acquire a far deeper understanding of where the challenges lie and what some of the emerging solutions to these challenges are. So you can see, if you have had a look at the agenda, that we have a few representatives from the FPO world, people who are actually there on the front lines, in the trenches, as it were. And I'm going to invite one of them to open this discussion. But we also are fortunate to have representatives, very senior representatives, both from the private sector, from the resource and civil society sector, who've been working with FPOs all these years, and we need to hear them too. And of course, I think that there is no conclusion that we want to arrive at, but I think we are all going to be better educated. And in a sense, this discussion today, I would take it as setting the agenda for the work that the task force, which Fiki has very kindly created on FPOs. And it's been a privilege to be associated with Fiki for the past few years in the Agriculture Committee. And I think it is a tribute to this leading trade and industry body that they have been the first to actually focus on FPOs from at least the last 2-3 years. They saw the potential. They saw that, as Mr. Nandakumar very rightly said, that FPOs, or rather institutions of farmers, that's the future of agriculture. That's perhaps the one missing piece where a lot of investment has to be done. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Mr. Kuldeep Solanki, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Gujpro Agribusiness Consortium. And I'll ask him to very briefly, in a minute, first introduce Gujpro, and then in about 5 minutes, sum up his experiences of working as the leader of a consortium of around 70 FPOs in Gujarat, what are the challenges he sees dealing with government? What are the challenges he sees dealing with industry and buyers? And of course, the larger ecosystem that the entire FPO world is dealing with. So, Kuldeep, can you please come in and share your remarks?
Thank you, Praveshji. I'm audible, right? Yeah. Yeah. Uh, to start with, in fact, about Gujpro, I would like to say Gujpro is a federation of farmer producer organization. Mostly farmer producer companies are associated. Around 30 FPOs are associated as shareholder members, and around 20 we also indirectly work with other 20 FPOs in Gujarat. And it has been a journey of around 6 years, and there were learnings.
Yeah. To briefly put on your cameras where everyone can see you while you're speaking, sure. Then you can go off camera.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. So we mainly work on these 4 to 5 commodities. Actually, there is demand for working on many more commodities by FPOs associated with us, but currently we are not able to serve each and every FPOs associated with us as shareholders. So our primary commodity is groundnut. So we aggregate groundnut, we process it at processing facilities located in Saurashtra region. That we do it on job work basis, and some years we have also hired processing units. And we sell it to a range of market players, which includes exporters and other manufacturers. And currently, in the last 10 days, we have also started trading in wheat and chana. So, taking advantage of the new farm laws, we have set up collection centers. That is mainly on the route to APMCs. So, we aggregate produce at these collection centers from farmers, and we sell it to a range of buyers here. And in the last 8 to 10 days, we have aggregated more than 400 tons. And next week, we will reach around 1,000 metric tons of chana and wheat, mainly wheat trading. And we also trade in tender coconuts and also mangoes. We organize Kesar Mahotsav, and we also home deliver mangoes to Kesar mangoes in Ahmedabad. That was about Gujpro. So the primary observation after this implementation of this farm laws, what on the ground, what I have observed is like the landscape, agriculture marketing landscape is quickly changing. And how I have seen that in most of the areas, many collection centers or procurement centers have come up. Like there could be traders or new players in the market segment. So they have set up collection centers, and I'm seeing that a lot of commodities being procured from these collection centers. And there are also large private mandis also coming up in Gujarat. So things are changing. The arrivals, I think, in 1 or 2 years, we will see a drastic change in the arrivals in APMCs, and many more collection centers by private traders and even FPOs would come up. And it has been observed that mostly buying from farmers directly at the village level or at collection centers is much cheaper than buying from APMCs, from traders in APMCs. That has been the observation in groundnut, wherein we tried from both areas, where we procured from brokers also. At the village level, we procured from FPOs. Almost 80% of our production comes from FPOs, 80 to 90%. But we also channelize other brokers also, and we have also bought from APMCs. So it has been observed that the cost, the logistics cost and other commissions, the cost of arrival means from the buyer's perspective, it is always expensive when we buy from APMCs. So even I have interacted with several other market players also, जो processors है वहाँ पे जहाँ पे हम processing करवाते हैं. I've been in interaction with several processors, mostly small and medium scale industries. They also prefer to buy directly from villages because kind of it is much cheaper. The logistics cost, even the mandi cess is not applicable. And when farmers, there is a saying that farmer has to go to APMC, it involves cost. When they buy from, when the buyers buy from the villages, actually they pay lesser than the APMC or in a similar trend, pricing trend. So most of them prefer to buy from villages and at the cluster level. So after this act, farm laws, lot of opportunities have come up, not just in terms of aggregation, but also storage and processing for FPOs. As it is, people will do it, either FPO or other private players like trader. They will set up their shops similar to what we buy अपना जो करियाना हम खरीदते हैं नजदीक से, वैसे गांव-गांव क्लस्टर लेवल पे ऐसे कई सारे कलेक्शन सेंटर्स निकल के आएंगे. That will happen in the next 1 to 2 years. But before discussing further how the current challenges, मतलब जो अभी हम जो फेस कर रहे हैं, जैसे कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर की बात करें, क्या भाई आईटीसी के साथ कनेक्ट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि वी सेल इट टू लोकल बायर्स. कई सारे बायर्स है जिसको हम सेल करते हैं. दिस कुड बी ट्रेडर्स विच टेक पोजीशन ऑन एनसीडीएक्स, जैसे कि चना बेचते हैं तो एनसीडीएक्स में पोजीशन है उनको बेचते हैं, कोई प्रोसेसर है उनको बेचते हैं, कोई लार्ज ट्रेडर है विच एग्रीगेटर्स, वी आल्सो सेल टू देम. बट व्हेन वी गो टू आईटीसी, मतलब आईटीसी में भी हमने बेचने का कोशिश किया, पर थिंग इज दैट द ट्रक वेट्स फॉर 3 to 4 days. तो हमारा जो हर रोज का 1000 रुपए जो ट्रक का रेट है वो चला जाता है. So it is, and the price they offer is not higher than what other traders or big manufacturers give to us. यहाँ पे एक श्योरिटी है कि यहाँ पे जो रिस्क इन्वॉल्व इन मतलब जो आपका पेमेंट का रिस्क है वो आईटीसी और बड़ी कंपनियां होती है रिलायंस, उसमें वो कम हो जाता है, काफी कम, क्योंकि बड़ी कंपनियां होती है उनका सेट स्टैंडर्ड है और वो दे देते हैं. पर हमारा ये भी ऑब्जर्वेशन है कि यहाँ पे नई चैनल्स भी है, कुछ पुराने ट्रेडिशनल चैनल्स है जिसमें आप बेच सकते हो जहाँ पे रिस्क कम है. तो कंपनीज के साथ एक ये चैलेंजेस है कि यहाँ पे अभी जो ट्रेडिंग पर्सपेक्टिव से ये इशू आ रहा है. एंड बेस्ड ऑन द अपॉर्चुनिटी कि क्या अपॉर्चुनिटी है एफपीओस के लिए, तो फर्स्ट वी नीड टू लुक एट द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ द एफपीओ. उसी के बेसिस पे हम यहाँ पे डिसाइड कर सकते हैं कैसे एंगेज होना है. तो एक है कि डिमांड बेस्ड प्रोडक्शन, कि एफपीओस है उनके साथ जो फार्मर्स जुड़े हुए हैं, तो यहाँ पे दे कैन प्रोवाइड क्वालिटी इनपुट मटेरियल्स, क्वालिटी सीड्स. तो उसके बेसिस पे या श्योर कि डिमांड बेस्ड प्रोडक्शन कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि प्योरिटी ऑफ सीड्स का बहुत बड़ा इशू है. तो उस हिसाब से अच्छी क्वालिटी की सर्टिफाइड सीड्स प्रोडक्शन करके वो कंपनीज को अप्रोच करे प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स के साथ. तो ऑब्वियसली देयर विल बी इंटरेस्ट विद इन द मैन्युफैक्चरर्स टू टाई अप डायरेक्टली विद द एफपीओस. दूसरा कि रिलायबिलिटी इन क्वालिटी एंड सप्लाई. अभी क्या हो रहा है कि ज्यादातर मोस्ट ऑफ द एफपीओस वर्क एट, मतलब ऑल एफपीओस वर्क एट डिफरेंट कैपेसिटी लेवल्स. किसी की कैपेसिटी ज्यादा है, किसी की कम है. तो हम कितना भी प्रयास करें वो एफपीओस के साथ काम करने का, वो आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते, क्योंकि उनके कैपिटल कंस्ट्रेंट होता है, बोर्ड लेवल से इतना सपोर्ट नहीं होता है, और एफपीओ एक ही आदमी होता है. तो ही हैज टू बी इन्वॉल्व्ड इन मल्टीपल टास्क, सो दे आर नॉट एबल टू गिव प्रॉपर आउटपुट ऑफ देयर वर्क. तो अलग अलग कैपेसिटी पे काम करते हैं. पर अगर ये कैपेसिटी डेवलप होती है फार्मर्स के लेवल पे, तो जो एफपीओस अपने जो स्ट्रक्चर, इनहेरेंट स्ट्रक्चर के हिसाब से दे कैन गिव रिलायबिलिटी ऑफ सप्लाई. जैसे कि ये कलेक्शन सेंटर सेटअप किए हैं, और साथ साथ में जो हमने आर्या कोलेटरल है, अर्गोस का मॉडल है कि यहाँ पे ये कूलिंग मेथड पे काम करे और जो वेयरहाउस में स्टोर करे विलेज और क्लस्टर लेवल पे. और लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स वी कैन एंटर, एफपीओस में एंटर इनटू लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स विद द बायर्स. यहाँ पे एक तो रेगुलर सप्लाई तो हो सकती है, पर 5 से 6 महीने में इतनी रिक्वायरमेंट है, तो ये सब कॉस्ट जोड़ के हम कॉर्पोरेट्स के साथ लॉन्ग टर्म टाई-अप्स कर सकते हैं. और कुछ कुछ ऑलरेडी कर रहे हैं एफपीओस. यहाँ पे जो बड़े ट्रेडर्स है या फिर बड़े बायर्स हैं, तो यहाँ पे 5-6 महीने तक का यहाँ पे पूरा स्टॉक करके उनको रेगुलरली मंथली सप्लाई करते हैं. और दूसरा ट्रेसेबिलिटी सिस्टम भी हम एस्टेब्लिश कर सकते हैं कि भाई जो दूसरे मार्केट प्लेयर्स हैं उनके बिहाफ, उनके कंपैरिजन में हमारा एक एडवांटेज है कि वी कैन गिव ट्रेसेबिलिटी फ्रॉम फार्म टू अल्टीमेटली जहाँ पे हमारा सप्लाई पॉइंट है, क्योंकि फार्मर्स जुड़े हुए हैं, हम उसका प्रोडक्शन भी कंट्रोल कर सकते हैं. तो ये स्ट्रेंथ को देख के काफी सारी अपॉर्चुनिटीज प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ एंगेज होने का मतलब एक निकल के आता है. और तो मतलब वैसे तो बहुत सारे पॉइंट्स हैं, बट फ्यू ऑफ द पॉइंट्स इज बिजनेस एसोसिएशन. यहाँ पे जैसे कि ये रेगुलर सप्लाई करना है वो हो सकता है, जैसे कि स्टोरेज करके उनको रेगुलरली ओवर 5 to 6 month 10 month पीरियड हम सप्लाई कर सकते हैं. दूसरा के जॉब वर्क कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स भी हो सकते हैं कंपनीज के साथ, कि अगर कंपनी बोला कि हमको ये प्रोसेस प्रोडक्ट्स चाहिए थ्रू आउट द ईयर, तो FPO will have the confidence to develop their own primary processing units और secondary processing units, और वो कंपनी के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के माध्यम से हर साल उसको प्रोडक्शन करके वो दे सकता है. तो हम भी वो डायरेक्शन में अभी प्रयास कर रहे हैं कि बड़ी कंपनियों के साथ अगर हमारा ब्लांच और रोस्टेड पीनट्स का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हो जाता है, तो वी विल गेट इट, वी विल टाई अप विद अ प्राइवेट कंपनी, क्योंकि इतना इन्वेस्टमेंट करना हमारी कैपेसिटी नहीं है. तो वी विल टाई अप विद प्राइवेट कंपनीज, डू द जॉब वर्क एंड सप्लाई टू दिस कंपनीज. और प्राइमरी प्रोसेस्ड है तो वो तो ऑब्वियसली हमारे 3-4 एफपीओस है जो ऑलरेडी प्राइमरी प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट डाल रहे हैं नेक्स्ट ईयर. तो इस प्रकार के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स हो सकते हैं। और दूसरा कि फेडरेशन लेवल पे जैसे कि सेकेंडरी टर्शियरी प्रोसेसिंग की बात है तो कंपनीज कैन आल्सो इन्वेस्ट, जहाँ पे प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स है जिसको वो पर्टिकुलर प्रोडक्ट चाहिए तो दे इन्वेस्ट एसपीवी बना के, प्राइवेट कंपनी बना के, उसमें इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगा, एफपीओ का एंगेजमेंट आएगा, फेडरेशन का एंगेजमेंट आएगा। तो प्रोसेसिंग फैसिलिटीज भी डेवलप हो सकती है इसमें, क्योंकि इतना इन्वेस्टमेंट एफपीओ लेवल पे एग्रीगेट करना मुश्किल है, इसलिए प्राइवेट कंपनीज भी इसमें इन्वेस्ट करके प्रोसेसिंग यूनिट्स बना सकती है और लॉन्ग टर्म सप्लाई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स कर सकती है। सिमिलरली बहुत सारे कोमोडिटी सेगमेंट के अंतर्गत काफी इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज है और बिजनेस एसोसिएशन का है, तो उसे टाइम का कंस्ट्रेंट देके आई विल एंड इट हियर। थैंक यू।
Thanks so much, Kuldeep. I'm very sorry to have to stop you. There is so much depth in what you're saying, and I assure you that though today we have a limited time constraint, but these are exactly the issues that we are going to take up in far greater detail in the FPO task force. So thank you so much for your short but very insightful presentation. I'm going to invite Madhu Khaitan, who's the program director at Pradhan, the country's largest NGO. And Pradhan has worked for a very long period with FPOs and, of course, with farmers and different forms of farmer collectives. And Madhu herself has some fantastic ground experience. I've had the privilege of seeing some of her work in Madhya Pradesh in tribal blocks where they built some amazing business models. So, Madhu, you heard Mr. Nandakumar earlier in the inaugural session, and he, in a sense, threw a challenge at NGOs like you that perhaps the DNA that you embed when you are working with farmer collectives is not enough to make them market savvy. So, I'd like you to react to that, and of course, share your thoughts on how we could build better market-ready collectives. Madhu, over to you.
Thanks. Thanks, Pravesh, and delighted to be here in this gathering and listening to the speakers in the inaugural session. It was very insightful and also very heartwarming about the the confidence. So speaking about our own experience of Pradhan. See, we've been we work with around 8 lakh women from smallholder farmer families across the tribal heartland spread across 7 states. The core of our work has been around economic prosperity. And, as we know that in the tribal heartland, almost every family has land of, at least a hectare, if not more. So that has been, the major focus area of our work. And I mean, just to tell you, summarize, I mean, our approach has been typically to start with, commodities or crops that people are already doing, which go towards meeting their food security needs, which is kind of the starting point for any family that they want to be secure in their food. And then to gradually introduce, new crops, maybe new field-based cash crops. But then eventually we found that, actually the bang for the buck for smallholder farmer families lies in, the production of off-season production of things like vegetables, fruits, flowers, etc., which give you the biggest return per unit area. Now, having said that, I mean, this is a very long-term work which brings about transformative results in terms of really transforming farmers that were subsistence farmers to actually to a stage where they're able to not just become surplus farmers but also significant transformation in their economic prosperity. When we come to the FPO work, and I must say Pradhan is a recent entrant into the agriculture FPO space, although we've done even if I say so myself, significant work in 2 particular sectors. One is Tasa sericulture, where we've done end-to-end work, right from raising Arjuna plantations to raising cocoons and then yarn making, and then actually having presence in the retail space wherein we are supplying to institutional buyers like Fab India and also export markets. And also then in the poultry space, wherein, we've actually set up this independent organization called NSPDT, which I'm sure many people would be familiar with. In the agriculture space, as we now get in for the last many years now, we have currently more than 45 FPOs. Some registered, some are on the way to becoming registered. What we are finding is that, currently this kind of a alignment between this imperative of increasing farmer incomes, which therefore means, you kind of, and actually figuring out the product, market, FPO service mix, that, you have to get it right. And that has its own, it requires a time for that evolution to actually happen. So I was listening very keenly also to Kuldeep when he was saying our own journey, if I can summarize, trying to summarize because time is limited. One is that we are seeing that in the perishable, because we've been in that space, that is a space where you require, it's a space which is very risky, the market side, also production side, but market size also side is also risky, and there's not too much scope considering that India really hasn't invested in cold storage or sort that kind of a space. So that can happen in areas where already farmers have reached that kind of scale and volume in a contiguous geography. What we're finding is that most of the FPOs, one is because of the areas where there's typically less application of fertilizers, pesticides, etc. One space that we are finding is that the configuration of these commodities into these niche segments of actually catering to what Mr. Nandakumar was saying, that food safety is becoming very important. So that's one big trend that I'm seeing across our geographies, that we are kind of catering now, starting to cater to those niche segments. So we have one FPO which I would like to take an example, but there are many others like that. Of Kharika Mathani, it's a small block in Bankura district where the FPO, that whole area is actually indigenous, home to indigenous paddy of various kinds. Now there the FPO has actually set up, invested in its own paddy mill, and because of that, a whole new line of markets has got opened up, and it is now packing, etc., sorting, grading, packing, and catering to this thing market segment, and therefore adding significant member value to otherwise traditional markets that they were catering to. But otherwise also, we are seeing a lot of cooperation and collaboration possible. For example, we are now collaborating with market players in this niche segment of safe harvest, etc., and other players like that, to actually cater to safe foods, and building upon the production of pulses, cereals, and oil seeds that these areas are into. I would also like to mention that some of the initiatives that we are tapping into, the government initiatives like the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, these are really very good initiatives, and we've made some initial headways into that, and we really hope to actually tap these possibilities to a much greater level. We also find that constraints on the credit front, although it still remains in the newer areas, but where we've made some initial headways around FPO movement, the credit market, credit access front is now opening up, in the sense of, the credit guarantee scheme from SFAC was the initial front runner, but now, there are more players coming in. So that seems to be now becoming more amenable to access with and MFIs anyway have always been, and Samunati is here and we've been partnering with them. Although we haven't really been able to partner with them around the trading bit, which also is on the offer, but somehow I think that hasn't taken off as much on the part of Samunati also. MP, we've been fortunate to have that kind of a policy to support entities like FPO. So initially there was a 25 lakh support. Now that has been increased to 50 lakhs, which I think, is really like a boon for entities, small entities. And on the challenge front, one is of course the challenge of investing in critical infrastructure like irrigation, which I think a body like FICCI bringing on board CSR investments to also allow that constraint to actually gradually be mobilized. I think that's one, but also um,
Madhu, sorry,
the
another minute
yeah.
perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up. So one is what many people have already mentioned, that we do need within a short span of time people who are already trained. So one is that we can have our own individual efforts at actually building staff, like how we've done in NSPDT. But I think some central coordinated effort may be put in place. The other thing is, in terms of the CBPO policy for 10,000 FPOs, it kind of also it's a suboptimal engagement of the CBPO, because it says that one FPO in one block. Actually, if you look at the block, there are possibilities to form multiple, I mean, at least 7, 8 FPOs, if not more. So that's one area that, that we could look into in terms of policy advocacy. And yeah, I think I'll stop here. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu. I know again there's such
No.
such rich experience behind this, and I must inform the participants that the great part is that Madhu has kindly consented to join us on the FPO task force. So we will be able to learn far more and also pick up some of these ideas to present to government. And the task force, let me share in advance, will work not just with the central government, but as Madhu pointed out, um, increasingly the state governments are becoming very crucial actors. And some of the state governments have come up with very creative, very positive policy initiatives. We hope to showcase these good initiatives to other states and use the forum and the platform of the task force to bring some sort of, like a minimum agenda on FPOs across the country. So thank you again, Madhu, for your rich insights. And we look forward to your contribution to the task force. I'm going to invite Dr. Aruna Rachakonda, who's the marketing director for Corteva. Corteva is a very big multinational and a big seed player in India. And I'd like you, when you speak, to especially tell us about your plans, if any, on engaging with FPOs as partners in seed production or even marketing, and the larger agriculture research agenda, which you believe can be facilitated by FPOs. So, Dr. Rachakonda, if you could please come in with your remarks.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Sharma. And I've been just listening through a lot of good topics on FPOs, and actually very enlightening to see that there's a rich amount of data as well as a lot of resources available that can be tapped into to know more about FPOs and the policy behind FPOs. I just want to take next couple of minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, to just emphasize what Corteva Agri-Sciences. So Corteva Agri-Sciences is a newly formed organization. So this is a newly formed Agri-Sciences organization between Dow, DuPont, and Pioneer. We work a lot with Pradhan in districts of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, now Bihar, Jharkhand, and also we have started a little bit of work in Maharashtra as well. I would want to switch gears a little bit here from generalizing the FPO perspective to be more specific to women FPOs. Now, why women FPOs, right? I was just we were just reading through some of the research available in terms of the number of FPOs, etc. So a report which was published by Azim Premjeev's University in 2019 says that about 7,000 plus FPOs exist. There's no gender segregated data here, so we are just assuming that we just put some gender numbers there. And about 3% of the 7,000 is basically women FPOs. So we are talking about barely 200, around 200 women-led or women participating FPOs. In that, and it also from a Cortiva sustainability goals perspective, and we completed the rollout of our sustainability goals for the next 10 years, and we concluded that empowering women, smallholder farming communities, especially led by women, would be one of our goals that we would be really making a mark in, or trying to make a mark in our smallholder agriculture communities. I would want to quote here an example, and then something which we are very closely working with Pradhan. I'm glad that Madhu did not take away my example. So it's good that I have an opportunity to talk about my seed production example of two FPOs that whom we have been working with very closely. One is Sampurna and the other is Chirayu. And Chirayu FPO, actually, just for the information of this group, we were given an award in terms of NABARD sponsored award in terms of establishing the FPO and running the FPO very successfully. What does this FPO do? The FPO is mainly focused on local maize seed production. Now, this is seed production, not grain production. So seed production would require a customer also. I mean, customer in the sense that someone who produces the seed, and then there is someone who packages the seed, someone privately labels the seed and then brings it to the market for a market access perspective. All this entire value chain is sponsored, I should say, or handheld by Cortiva Agri-Sciences and Pradhan in collaboration. There are specific nuances in terms of how that handholding happens. One such solution that we are, there was no idea about how seed production happens in terms of the seed per se from a local consumption, and how can it be marketed as a seed rather than grain. So that required a little bit of handhold, not little bit, I mean a lot of handholding in terms of what is actually marketing of seed, not just selling the grain in a market yard. Means. So Cortiva established these FPOs and is planning to also establish some of the offices which are important from a marketing team establishment and training and handholding. They're also trying to build some cold storage warehouses, facilities, very important, so that the seed remains fresh and the vigor remains so till it gets into the market and for the next season, because the seed production usually happens in Rabi and that needs to be utilized in Kharif. How can we create those farmer customers for these FPOs so that the farmer customer can come and buy this private labeled high quality seed? How do we ensure the quality of the seed? How do we ensure the marketing of the seed? And how do you ensure that, if any complaints, so the entire value chain is kind of taken care of? And that's how Cortiva Agri-Sciences expertise, the priorities that we have in terms of world-class seed production, and the extension opportunities provided by Pradhan, they come into the picture in terms of increasing the market access. What we also see is we want to actually run these programs for at least 3 to 5 years time frame. Why 3 to 5 years, and then why only seed production? Because we identified that open pollinated varieties, whether it is vegetable seed, pulses, oil seeds, etc., because of the bulky nature of the seed, localized production areas and marketing areas or market access is very important in terms of making that entire enterprise very successful. So that was one of the prerequisites that we have, and our aim is to have about 1,000 shareholder FPOs, which are run by a handful of women FPO, women entrepreneurs or women FPOs who can generate very good profit. They get appropriate fertilizer, pesticide licenses, so that all the inputs which are required for the seed production in terms of high quality parent seed as well as high quality fertilizers and insecticides are also provided. So that's a little bit of an example, and great collaboration with Pradhan's team. We are absolutely satisfied with the metrics that are presented every quarter in terms of how we are doing in terms of the growth we are bringing in terms of profitability, as well as the training and the knowledge enhancement of these women FPOs. With that, thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Sharma, and it was great knowing all of you and talking through this FPO piece. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Arunaji. Such inspiring, information, and wonderful to see collaboration between industry and civil society in a very core area where I think this is the most, critical need. And I mentioned earlier, we look forward to greater engagement with you as the task force moves forward in its work. We need certainly more time to hear some of these initiatives and also how to upscale them and how to broad base them. So thank you again for your thoughts and your very interesting ideas. I'm going to go back now to our FPO partners and bring in Yogesh Dwivedi. He's CEO, like Kuldeep, of a very big consortium of FPOs in Madhya Pradesh. Yogesh, if you could, in the next 6 to 7 minutes, sum up your thoughts on what needs to be done from the policy perspective, what needs to be done from the marketing perspective, and third, since nobody has spoken so far, and I want to prepare an agenda for our friend from Samanati, what needs to be done more on the financing perspective. So policy, markets, financing. If you could share some of your experiences and thoughts. Yogesh. Yogesh Dwivedi? Vijna, can you check? Has he fallen off? He was very much on the...
You'll have to unmute. Yes, sir, I'll check.
No, he's available. I think he's speaking, not able to hear. We are unable to hear.
Yeah, I can
Just
see
make
him
sure
on
you
the
are
panel.
unmuted. We can't hear you, Yogesh. Just see, are you muted? We can't hear you. There's a mute button on the left. Can't hear you, Yogesh. Okay, I'm going to give time for Yogesh to log back in. Is Dr. Vadivel present on the link? Dr. Vadivel, can you hear me? I'll bring in Yogesh later.
Sir, he's not available for the meeting today. He had an emergency.
He's not available. Okay. Then I'll come back to Yogesh once, Richa, you can confirm that he's sorted his link out. Let me go back to Bala, who's been on the screen. Bala Krishnan is the CEO of Vritti, another very major player in the FPO promotion space. And Bala, if you could share your thoughts on what you see as the key support systems that need to be put in place to encourage the growth of this body of farmer collectors. Over to you, Bala.
Sure. Thank you, Parveshji, and thanks Fiki and NAFPO for this wonderful opportunity to be part of this today's deliberation. I'd like to, we have been in this space from 1997, but when this, as I think we were, Sasikant was presenting about the FPO journey, we joined in the pilot program when it started in Karnataka. We started working on this FPO. One, we've felt it is very, very important. These institutions which we are building, it is for future. It required, it's about long-term approach and the thinking, and which will enable the FPOs to govern the value chain. What we are seeing, Amul or any other the model, where the farmers are owning the value chain and they are able to get fairer price compared to the regular channels. That's what we believe in. I think we have been in that journey where we are looking at the long-term approach and work with these farmers producer organization as a people professional partnership, which is that's a kind of partnership which we are working with about 30 FPOs in the current country currently. in 5 states. That's one important learning which we have learned during this journey. The second, which also we feel, I think I hear what Mr. Nandakumarji was saying about the NGOs, the looking at business approach. I think we are maybe fortunate. Some of 2 of our founders, they are from IRMA, and they are also imbibed the principles which is learned from Dr. Kurian. Yeah, and we are taking that approach. How do we look at market which can actually help the farmers to improve their income, and how we make this farming community resilient in whatever it happens. Yeah, where we are looking at it, one more, I think the challenge, and then we have been seeing in this journey, is about how do we build and then establish the value chain within these clusters wherever we work with the farmers producer organization. I think to establish, I think today, fortunately, we have many non-banking financial companies, and few banks are also coming forward to give capital. Yeah, and also we have schemes which is also available. But one we felt which is also required here, how do we bring in the capital, the technology, the professionals, and these required in a blended financing. It is not only as a debt or subordinate debt, whatever you can bring in, but you also need, there is a grant component as well. But all three has to come together to establish value chain. I think that is missing in the current system, because you get something for capital, but you won't get a required, you need to hire a professional, or you need to build the capabilities of the entire team to establish value chain. And you need also technology, which I mean IT technology, where these are all can actually help in establishing this entire value chain. We feel that is a missing element here. How do we bring in, I think one example I've been also quoting, the SIDBI has set up a SIDBI for microfinance, the foundation, where they brought in, they were able to facilitate NGOs to move to a legally eligible microfinance institute. Yeah, there they were giving grant, they were giving capacity building support, they were also giving debt. Yeah, how do we bring in all together? That's where we have been. We have started. It's called a program called FPO Sakti, the investment facility. We have been talking to various partners. How do we bring in all these 3 elements together? We are able to facilitate and establish the value chain. Then the farmers producer organization can actually own the value chain, and they are able to govern the value chain. And the one more important point, which also which we have been deliberating, and then we have been working towards, where I think not each FPO can actually have a brand and then establish and compete with many organizations already well-established brand. How do you bring in a common brand among the like-minded organization, which is also like Triloshan Shastri professor has done it in Farm Veda, where he's also looking at where the FPO can join with them, they can actually sell it through the brand of Farm Veda. Similarly, we have been working on the brand which is called Miri, Made in Rural India. Yeah, where we are looking at it, the collective of 30 farmers producer organizations can use this brand under one umbrella. Then we are able to also facilitate and connect to the market. There are pilots, we have done it, and then it has shown enthusiasm among all of us, and then we are actually moving towards that. I think we feel that there is a common brand, and at some level it is definitely required. Then not everyone can actually establish a brand. And you also see CSA, which is Ramananjalailu, also has been working with their own FPOs and then having a common brand, Sagajagaram. Yeah. One more in this, I think, policy level, which we need to also look at. We cannot have a uniform policy across state. I think when Madhu Ketan was talking about it, they work in the tribal belt. You need to look at, there is a power of the state, because it also matters a lot where the policies and the stability of the government, which also enables to implement these programs, and market maturity, which is interior tribal belt. You don't have any market share, then you need to take the market. Then various infrastructure facilities are not available. If you have same policy across country, I think it is not going to be useful for what we are having vision today. It's about 10,000 farmers producer organization, which we need to look at about market maturity of the particular state. or particular locality. And we need to also look at what is the power of the state, which is I'm looking at stability, and then how it is enabling environment or very conducive for implementing these programs. The third also, it's about strength of the community, their own strength, which all three come together, then only we can make this program successful. I think that is the kind of policies also which we need to look at it. And some of the other stuffs which also maybe contra to what maybe Nandakumarji was also talking about on how do we use government mechanism which also can enable farmers producer organization to be in the market, and then like for example how FPOs can be a supplier for a PDS, yeah, in a particular state, yeah, and now we are buying all the way what do you call rice from Punjab. Why not? It can actually the rice growers in Tamil Nadu, they actually supply to their own PDS, yeah. Is it how these kind of the policies which can also enable, and which is also we are talking about MSP is there, but MSP is a lot of controversies are going on. But how MSP can actually enable, and it can be a benchmark for any procurement. Yeah, but I completely agree. Market should take over, but market should only help, and then can actually contribute to the growth of the farmers and then agriculture system. But somewhere there should be a rules and regulation which can actually enable, but it should not. What do you call it should not be lesser than something which farmers should not get it always. Yeah, that's a status currently. But how these MSP procurement or the PDS procurement, all that where FPOs can actually play a larger role, and then the farmers producer organization can actually benefit out of it. And then the last, which is about technology, I think which we have been seeing, the many technology firms have been coming. But how do we use augment the technology with the human interface? Then we are able to facilitate that. One is about training program, which is very important to build these institutions to sustain in the longer run. And the second is about the transparency in the entire value system, where you are able to trace, and then what is the demand, what is the output is surplus is available in every cluster. I think for this, I think we need technology. There also, we need a lot of investments as well. Yeah, these are all some of the things which we have been working on, and we are seeing some progress. I think all of us, if we align, I think we'll be able to make in much more progress here. Thank you, Parvez, for this
Thank you,
opportunity.
Bala. Thank you as always for very insightful comments, and very heartening to hear your core message, which of course was also, uh, the message Madhu gave out, that civil society is quite aware and civil society is working in the context of the market reality. And nobody, I think, would today close their eyes to the fact that if these institutions are to thrive, we have to make them survive in the market as per the rules of the market. Sure, the market can be made a little more rule based, a little more transparent. And I think the work that you and many of your colleagues are doing in, I think, smoothing out this information asymmetry, no amount of thanks are enough for that. So thank you again. This is the cue for Hari, Vice President at Samunati, to come in. Samunati has been mentioned a couple of times earlier. So Hari, while you're welcome to the bouquets, I can assure you there's some brickbats also lined up for you. So both the limitations,
Certainly,
challenges.
and thank you, Pravesh, for having us on the conversation. And of course, as we are working in the sector, I think the brickbats always come with the bouquets and help us prepare a better product, a better solution for the customer, because eventually it's about meeting the requirement of the customer. But perhaps I'll just touch base on what we are trying in addition to what we have already done in terms of providing credit to the farmer producer organization. What else are we trying to do? Because I think some work has been done on at least providing the linkage to credit for the farmer producer organizations. And we are working with FPOs of various vintages, turnovers, as well as into the quantum of credit limits, that we are able to work now with agencies who need as little as 5 lakhs. And for say, a requirements of below 25 lakhs, now we have a very, very simplified assessment method where you basically need to have an FP, farm producer organization registration license in whatever form, company or otherwise. But if you have 100 members, if you have a net worth of 1 lakh rupees, you are eligible for the loan, and a very, very light touch due diligence because the amount under consideration is small and it is more or less an investment into the company that let's get intermediation activities started. And then this will be the only way to say, how do we stop this chicken and egg game? And how do we first put money and then see the activity emerge, and with a small amount? So I think that's one. I think our work for larger amounts, I think we have been doing. And because we realize that the rates of interest have to be competitive. And as a startup ourselves, we have long faced a challenge on our own cost of capital. And while we work on that in reducing the cost of capital, and indeed now we have brought down our FPO lending rates to an interest rate of 14% at best for FPOs. And because we work in the enterprise space, we are actually cross-subsidizing this this version because we don't necessarily make money on lending. But because we have taken a holistic approach to lending to the FPOs, working with the FPOs, we also want to work with them on the market linkages, the advisory services, and other ecosystem building activities. And I think there, what we have tried to do is, as Bala said, get into how to leverage blended finance. So we've tried to pull in pools of risk capital, whereas the Rabobank Foundation, whether it's USAID, and with another large institution now, an American institution is coming up, we have tried to leverage guarantee programs for lending to FPOs, the smaller FPOs, especially where it's becoming more difficult, from a credit risk perspective to provide the linkage, but also provide longer tenor financing. Okay, so short-term working capital is done. How do we facilitate asset creation, loans of more than a year, loans of 2 years, 3 years? How do we do that? Because there, the money is at a long-term money and therefore needs to be cheaper. So how do we bridge that? So we have kind of brought in these international impact investors for providing such guarantee facilities to overall facilitate lending and lending for longer tenors, larger quantums. We've also started co-lending along with several financial institutions. And we've signed up 2 NBFCs already who are in the space. But we're also on the verge of signing agreements with 3 or 4 major banks, which would bring a much larger and a much cheaper pool of capital to lend to the farmer producer organization space. And they would ride on our engagement, our track record, but also the experience of Samanati in underwriting in the FPO space. So that would kind of help the cost of capital because we recognize that capital needs to be cheap for ensuring more viability of the FPO space. And our product development engine is always at work for developing more and more customized products around the asset creation, the equipment finance, and even around the various subsidy programs. It can be bridge the subsidy. Can be, because the subsidies are back-ended in a reimbursement basis from the state and central governments. Is it possible to bridge the subsidy? And would it be possible to partner with a bank which would be eligible for receiving the subsidy? So I think these are the kind of things that we are putting at play to support the FPOs more holistically. I think in order to popularize FPO as an asset class, and I use the word asset class responsibly, it means one, bringing in more money into the sector, but also making the FPO a viable channel of intermediation for engaged market forces. There we are working now for the past couple of years with the Gates Foundation to create FPO as an asset class. We have developed a grading tool, which we've now deployed across all our customers for simply signifying what does a particular grade of risk denote for an FPO, whether for engagement with lenders or other market forces, just like how the MFI grading started, supported by MCRIL, and then CRISIL came in, supported by SIDBI and other foundations. Similar exercise of grading and denoting the degree of risk when engaging with so-and-so farmer producer organization. I think that's something we've done some interesting work. We've also invested and we are working on a leadership academy for the leadership, the board of directors, and the CEOs of the farmer producer organizations a digital academy which will help deliver content in their language which they understand and would help train the leadership on principles of commerce, of economics, but also on the aspects of governance, which is so important for the self-sustainability of the farmer producer organization. And then again, we are working with some wonderful institutions, including some of them on the screen, in putting together this academy. And I think last but not the least, because we believe the market linkages are extremely important for an FPO, we are working on two fronts. Not only are we trying to boost our own market linkage engine in the form of some of the agro solutions, which can buy from the farmer producer organizations and sell to the agri enterprises, which feeds into the supply chains of the ITCs, the Godrej Agrovids, the ADMs, and the Dreyfuses of the world. But we are also actively forging partnerships with agri enterprises and startups who have an interest in procurement through FPOs. So we are actually now giving longer term money, more quantum of money, cheaper money to those enterprises that show a commitment to procure from FPOs. So for example, if we have some startups doing makhana procurement or dry fruit procurement, or procurement of certain staples, we are indeed giving them long-term growth capital and long-term debt and more quantum of working capital debt, provided that they procure some milestone number of commodity from the farmer producer organization sector. So in a way, we are nudging our customers, and because we work on both sides of the value chain, on the demand side as well, we are nudging, persuading, encouraging our demand side customers to procure more from the FPO space. Indeed, as some of the speakers earlier have said, there is a lot of enthusiasm, but we are focused on the execution of how to translate this interest into transaction. So I think that's where we are working, and we're working both to strengthen our customers, but also Sabunnati Agro as a vehicle of aggregating produce from the FPOs, and how can we channelize it to our own customers on the demand side, and how can we bring more people into the space. And we are working finally on some technological solutions which can help make this whole aggregation better, more efficient, with more visibility to both sides of the value chain. I'll stop here and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Hari. Thank you so much. And today I'll only let you have the bouquets. We'll save the brickbats for later. But honestly, some extremely pioneering work. Sabunnati is a segment leader. It was the first to take the risk of opening up finance to FPOs. Many others have followed you. It'll be wonderful if you can get the banks to partner. And again, for the benefit of the audience, Anil Kumar, the founder and CEO of Sabunnati, has kindly agreed to join us on the FPO task force. And we hope to take many of these ideas and models across the financial world. So thanks again, Hari, for your inputs. I think Yogesh is now back on the link. Yogesh, if you can please, in the next 6-7 minutes, summarize your experience, as I said, around access to markets, policy dimension, and finance. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Namaskar to everybody. In fact, I would like to start with my remark that FPOs are, largely suffering from big challenges of lack of beliefs at different levels. And firstly, it starts with corporates actually. What we felt during our 10 to 15 years of our this work in FPO, what we found that still corporate don't believe us actually. And in fact, I would like to elaborate the scenario actually. Agar if you see the before independence era India, जब हम लोग इंडिपेंडेंस मतलब हमारा जो आज़ादी नहीं मिली थी, तो if you see the Indian history की 100 years में तो लोगों को मालूम ही नहीं चला कि इंडिया जो बोलते हैं गुलाम हो गया, बट उनको पीपल नॉट रियलाइज एक्चुअली, बहुत सारे लोगों को कि प्लासी 1700 एंड देन 100 years में तो मालूम नहीं चला. आफ्टर 100 years के बाद लोगों ने उसको थोड़ा सा रखा कि हाँ देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम्स, एंड देन फिर उसको हमें टाइम लगा अगेन 100 ईयर, लगभग 18 ईयर की, हम उस पे से लोगों ने फिर किया. एंड इफ यू सी द सिनेरियो, आई वुड लाइक टू लिंक हियर कि कई सारे लोग ऐसे थे इंडिया में, हमारे जो कॉमन जो मैन है, जो हमारे लोग थे, हमारे जो सोसाइटी में जो नीचे तबके के लोग थे, उनको शायद बिलीव नहीं था, उनको बहुत सारे लोग, क्योंकि हम कभी आजाद हो पाएंगे. और कई सारे लोगों ने, लेकिन उसी समय जब ना आफ्टर 1900 में जब गांधी जी इंडिया में आए और उन्होंने छोटे छोटे एक्सपेरिमेंट साउथ अफ्रीका में किया था, और उन्होंने उस तरह के एक्सपेरिमेंट में छोटे छोटे सक्सेस उन्होंने गेन किया था. एंड ही ट्राइड टू try to just repeat those experimented in India. उन्होंने छोटे छोटे एक्सपेरिमेंट किए, चाहे चंपारण का हो, चाहे छोटे छोटे रिजल्ट आया लोगों ने. कुछ एक सा सोसाइटी में एक लोग थे जिनको देखा कि यार इन्होंने कुछ साउथ अफ्रीका में किया था. अभी एफपीओस के साथ हमारे साथ वही, हम लोग उसी में, आल्दो हमारे पास एक एग्जांपल है, जैसे अमूल जैसे एग्जांपल है, एक है, ज्यादा तो नहीं है, बहुत सारे, बट छोटे छोटे एग्जांपल हो गए. बट स्टिल अभी हमारे सारे लोग जो है अभी भी उसमें बिलीव नहीं कर रहे हैं. हमें ऐसा लगता है, why I'm saying it, because what the responses that we are getting from the different institution, either it is a financial institution or it is a corporate. So लोगों के जो रिस्पॉन्स है उनको ये है कि जो सिस्टम, प्रिवेलिंग सिस्टम्स है, जो हमारा आजादी के पहले, मैं उसको अगेन रिपीट करूंगा, कि जो हमारे ठिकाने थे, जो हमारे जो राय साहब और जो छोटे छोटे राजा थे, उनको मालूम था कि सिस्टम ऐसा है, इसमें चेंज कभी होगा नहीं. जो कॉमन जो मैन है उसका पावर को कभी उन्होंने रियलाइज नहीं किया था कि दे विल बिकम किंग मेकर. एक दिन इंडिया में ऐसा भी होगा कि ये लोग बड़े बड़े राजा भी इनके घरों में आकर के, इनके गेट में आके खड़े होंगे और इनसे मांगेंगे कुछ कि आप हमको दे दो. ऐसा कभी इमेजिन नहीं किया था उन लोगों ने कि ऐसा भी होगा, और ऐसा हुआ है. तो मैं व्हाट आई एम वांटेड टू से हियर कि एफपीओस जो है, ये हमारे जो फार्मर्स है उनके लिए जो एक सोशल एंड इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म का जो एक टूल्स है, इसमें दुनिया में और हमारे इंडिया में भी कई जगह छोटे छोटे ऐसे इन्होंने सक्सेस गेन किया है. बट स्टिल हमारा जो पेन है, दैट आई वांटेड टू रिफ्लेक्टिंग, मैं यहाँ पे बताना चाह रहा हूँ कि अभी वो बिलीव नहीं. अभी भी जो कॉर्पोरेट में हमारे ऊपर बैठे हुए लोग हैं, बहुत सारे हैं, बड़े बड़े हमारे साथी यहाँ जुड़े भी हुए हैं, कि उनके जो हायर लेवल के लोग हैं, वो दे आर स्टिल बिलीविंग, दे स्टार्टेड बिलीविंग कि नहीं, एफपीओस के साथ हमें काम करना चाहिए. बट जो नीचे के लोग बैठे हुए हैं उनको दे आर मोर कंफर्टेबल विद देयर ट्रेडिशनल सिस्टम्स ऑफ वेंडर्स. वो जो उनका सिस्टम एक बढ़ा, जो पिछले 25 सालों से 50 सालों से चल रहा है, दे आर मोर कंफर्टेबल. हमको बोलते जरूर है कि कम फॉरवर्ड, वी आर वेरी मच प्रो एफपीओ, हम एफपीओ के साथ काम करने को तैयार है. बट अगर इफ यू सी देयर पॉलिसी, कि व्हाट पॉलिसी हैव मेड फॉर द एफपीओस, कुछ भी नहीं है. दे हैव नथिंग्स. इन फैक्ट दे आर नॉट रेडी टू पास द बेनिफिट व्हिच दे आर पासिंग टू द डिफरेंट वेंडर्स. उनके जो मिडिल्स मैन है उनको जो पास करते हैं, उसको भी पास करने के लिए रेडी नहीं. प्रैक्टिकली, थ्योरेटिकली तो बोलते हैं वो, कई सारे प्रोग्राम पे आकर के दे बोलते हैं, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली नहीं है. एंड फॉर अदर इंस्टीट्यूशन के लिए भी मैं यही बोलना चाहूंगा, चाहे हमारे फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन हो, आप एफपीओस को लेकर के जो उनको अभी भी मिलना चाहिए वो नहीं मिल पा रहा है, जो सपोर्ट्स उनको मिलना चाहिए नहीं मिल पा रहा. एंड देन जब हम गवर्नमेंट के पास जाते हैं तो लोग बोलेंगे यार ये तो गवर्नमेंट के पास ज्यादा जाते हैं तो दे आर नॉट, इनका डीएनए में बिजनेस नहीं है ना. सो देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. सो व्हाट यू कैन से कि थोड़ा सा कुछ प्रॉब्लम है. व्हाट आई एम फीलिंग एक्चुअली, मैं वी आर स्ट्रगलिंग, स्टिल वर्किंग, एंड कॉर्पोरेट के साथ काम भी कर रहे हैं. बट दैट दैट द सपोर्ट दैट वी आर एक्सपेक्टिंग, जो एफपीओस जो हमारा है, जो बहुत बड़ा है और बहुत बड़ा होने वाला है, उसको कोई रोकेगा नहीं, ना रोक पाएगा. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि ये जो मूवमेंट है, ये वही कॉमन लोग हैं जो कि जिन्होंने जो है आज जो किंग मेकर बने हुए हैं दुनिया में, और जो इसकी जो पावर को पूरा दुनिया और जो है रियलाइज कर रही है, और जो कि आज पूरा डेमोक्रेसी का, तो ये एफपीओ के साथ भी ये पावर है, और ये आएगा. और इसमें होगा जो लोग हमें ज्यादा जल्दी हमें सॉलिसिट करेंगे, हमें सपोर्ट करेंगे, हम उनके पास हम लोग शायद बेटर कर पाएंगे, और वो भी दे कैन आल्सो गेट द बेनिफिट. इट इज नॉट ओनली कि वन वे है, इट वुड बी बोथ वे, बोथ पार्टनर विल बी बेनिफिटेड. बट वो ट्रस्ट, वो बिलीव, वो जो फॉरवर्डनेस है, दैट इज स्टिल लैकिंग. व्हाट आई वांटेड टू से स्टिल डिस्पाइट ऑफ ऑल दीज ऑड्स, कई सारे लोग आ रहे हैं, काम कर रहे हैं. हम लोगों ने जैसे कि मध्य भारत, हम लोग 125 एफपीओस, 1.67 लाख फार्मर्स के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, 100 करोड़ का एनुअल बिजनेस कर रहे हैं, काम कर रहे हैं. बट स्टिल ह्यूज पोटेंशियल इज देयर. सो उसमें जो मैं रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूंगा इस फोरम के माध्यम से, जो भी लोग यहाँ पे सुन रहे हैं, जो यहाँ पे लोग हैं, कि एफपीओस पे अब बिलीफ का जो लैक ऑफ बिलीफ जो है ना, वो उसको थोड़ा सा आगे आइए, थोड़ा सा मेक योर पॉलिसीज लिटिल एफपीओ प्रो एफपीओज जो अभी नहीं है, अनफॉर्चुनेटली नहीं है, आप हमें वो भी नहीं दे पा रहे हैं जो आप एक वेंडर्स को देते हैं. सो ओनली दैट इज अवर फ्रस्ट्रेशन एंड आई वांट टू से फ्रॉम दिस फोरम. और हम वो मिलेगा हमें, दैट वी आर श्योर एक्चुअली, बिकॉज हम रुकने वाले में से नहीं है. और हमारा जो है ना, अभी गवर्नमेंट 10,000 लेके आई है, लोग बोल रहे हैं कि ये आर्टिफिशियल होगा. कुछ भी नहीं होगा, समय के साथ दे विल कम. कुछ बंद होंगे, कुछ नए फिर शुरू होंगे, बट time will come for the FPOs and it is started. So only I wanted to, we have huge strength of aggregation, as my friends that from PwC said कि that is our strength, that ability की aggregation का जो strength है, that we have actually, because of different hurdles, because of different barriers, हम वो शायद उतना एक्सप्रेस दिखा नहीं पा रहे. वी आर नॉट एबल टू show the result actually as people are expecting, but time will come when our FPOs will they will show the result actually. And that's why I'm requesting from this forum ki people from the financial institution, people from the from the corporate, they should come forward, make your policy little more FPOs, pro FPOs. That's only I wanted to say. और लोग हमारे साथ आ रहे हैं, बहुत सारे लोग जिनके साथ हम काम कर रहे हैं. So I always welcome those organization, those peoples. Thank you so much. मैं इतना ही बोलना चाहूंगा. Thank you sir.
As always, full of passion, and we really respect this passion. This is what has kept this whole segment going. Yogesh has shown incredible leadership in a very, very difficult, I think, situation. He's a pioneer, and we salute your work, Yogesh, and all the points you made. I think your appeal is not falling on deaf ears. And in fact, I'm going to invite Sachin Sharma of ITC to come in and see if he can respond to some of the issues that Yogesh has spoken. Sachin,
Sir, you have to unmute and speak. You are in. We are not able to hear you.
Sorry. So good afternoon, everyone. I'll quickly put my points on the subject because I've heard many eminent speakers and different thoughts. So I think a couple of trends which I feel strongly will, be really, shaping up the role of FPOs in the future. One is, the changing consumer preferences in the way agriculture is been done and the food is been grown. So we see a lot of changes which are coming towards food safety, traceability, sustainability. This point has been discussed. So this is going to really provide impetus to farmer collectives, because this kind of production you cannot do really with connecting with individual farmers. So a group collective is needed so that either it's a food safe production or traceable production which can be done. And today not only international customers, even the domestic consumer is also quite concerned in terms of how its food or the ingredient in the food are being grown, how safe they are. And I see a lot of role which FPO can do. Another is attribute based crop production. Here again, be it specific attribute based crop, or something like organic farming. That is also one area wherein a lot of scope is coming. This is apart from the general say advantages which other speakers also told, which is input collectivization, or savings in the supply chain cost, which will come by way of aggregation of output and linking it. Since there is a lot of delta which is there for increasing the yields in India, I think farmer collectives have a lot of scope and role to play there. So basically, FPO movement has been old. We have seen a lot of challenges. I'll just reiterate few of them basis our experience. I think one is that still most of the FPOs have worked on the production upside, in the sense that you produce and then you go and connect to sell, be it in the existing markets or with say private players or with cooperatives and so on. I think the linkages have to start with active engagement, right from crop production planning. That's where the change has to come. Wherever this kind of say production-led approach is there, we have seen more successful FPOs, and this also comes with the federations, because they are able to engage better with the end use players. So that's where I think the value chain players role come in, wherein how can you engage with the production planning. And with the food safety and other aspects growing, traceability, the production planning and engaging from crop production is the way to go. We have seen very good successful examples in our own business. We are into say food safe certified mango production, organic mango production through FPOs. We are also working in spices where food safe spices are being produced through different farmer collectives. And we are also now connecting with FPOs in the conventional crops like grains. We have farmer groups in our dairy engagement. That's where also there's a lot of focus on the quality retention and say safe milk production. So all those things wherein you engage with the production planning, really the real benefits start coming in. So the relationship actually should move from transactional to a participative relationship. And that's where the industry can play a lot of role. And FPOs can also become much more competitive with right to win. Which is not a right that you are FPO, so therefore there has to be additional benefits. But yes, you are more efficient because of the structural engagement, and therefore the efficiency comes in, and the business rights to do the business come in. And I think this participative approach can definitely do that. We have seen many successful examples, currently the way we are working. Some thoughts are there in terms of how can member farmers be more involved. See, currently there are few, active members. There are many other members who become member of FPO, but later on with the journey we have seen their activation is not there. So here I think the participative approach of connecting each and every member will help. And again here, right from production planning, input planning to crop production and then market linkages can really help every member getting involved. Otherwise, I've seen many times that FPOs are being created for fruits and vegetable and farmers are growing grains because they don't really understand, and therefore once there is a production, then buyer has been sought, and the entire purpose is left. So that's another aspect which I think is very, very important, that how can you do that. Another element which is going to play very, very important role is a digital connect and platform. I think with large scale connect with member farmers and FPO also needing support. Today on a manual basis doing all this is very, very difficult. I think right digital interventions which can help production planning in the entire journey of the crop cycle, right from farming input up to transactions, up to say traceability, and helping FPO to have compliances, and member farmers having a better visibility in terms of the say total activities of FPO, how the say financial performance is, how the business performance is. That is also going to have very critical role. So there are some startups who already started working digital piece. There are many corporates, they are creating FPO modules. So I think that's also one area which is going to be very, very critical. And last but not the least is financial inclusion, for which I think already we had a lot of thoughts. Still, I think the ease and access of government schemes needs a lot of improvement, because when you really speak to FPOs on ground, the availability of various government schemes which are tailor made for FPO nowadays is limited. So I think that enabling environment of getting these schemes will be very, very critical, because still a lot of FPOs take say loans on higher interest rates while the schemes are available, or for their investments on infrastructure. So those schemes will be very, very critical and essential, and it should come. Here I think again the moment you connect value chain players with FPOs, the confidence of the banking sector also to pass on the schemes, and also for FPO to rightfully design its say infrastructure, be it say post harvest infra, storage infra, and therefore go for different say credit support or institutional support for building that infra. That also becomes much more viable the moment you have value chain players participating. So these are certain thoughts which I have while we are actively working with many say FPO. So I think that a rightful industry linkage, creating a platform approach and this enabling environment, and then creating demand-driven, say, agri chains would be some of the critical interventions for a success of FPO project in future. Right, enabling environment is getting built up. Government policies are quite favorable, and I see a lot of momentum which is going to come.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you. Heartening to see a major corporate having a vision. Of course, all of us agree lots needs to be done, and we hope to continue to engage with you going forward in the task
Certainly,
force
yes.
to see how some of these small pilots can be upscaled. Thanks again for your input. Can I also invite Mr. Anand Chandra from Arya Collateral to, and I'm sorry we are a little now running out of time. There are two more speakers after you, Anand. If you could just summarize Arya's experience of working with FPOs and how you see upscaling this entire sector from a market player who's into infrastructure, go down in collateral management. So your thoughts, please, Anand.
Yeah, thank you, Praveji. I'll just try to keep it short, and because most of the points have already been covered. Our experiences, we have a model which is very close to Samunati because we also work together with them, and our idea is to give an end-to-end hand-holding to the farmers, which basically on the post-harvest side, because that's where our strength lies. So we have done various projects, where we have done a training and all participations along with the FPCs to and map them to a market-driven approach where they've been advised to produce material which will suit the requirement of the corporate, because it is new build being passed and eventually becoming a reality in few days time once this all protest and all gets over. So the FPC corporate connection is something which will be very critical for the growth of the FPOs. So so mapping of those FPOs with the corporate, basically aligning them with the expectations of the corporate is the first thing which happens, which we have done in certain geographies. We even did with 54 FPOs along with the project with CDC, and we have already funded 100 FPOs directly through our own NBFC. So the objective is first to align them with the market. Second is to provide them a platform for giving direct lending against the stock as security. Now, one of the apprehensions which most of the FPOs and even farmers members who are associated with the FPOs is that when the price falls, what happens? So we have also worked out a default guarantee along with Rabo Foundation, wherein the prices falls to a certain level, the loss associated with the price falls will get covered with that. So that's another activity which helps us in lending it to the FPOs. We have also done a couple of pilots where we have used the hermetic storage as a unit of storage, where this storage happened in the field itself, and through our NBFC we were able to lend to that FPO. So that's a very flexible storage model which will come in, which does not require fumigation, and it ensures safekeeping of the commodity. So that's to us, the way forward for us in working with the FPOs, where we look at linking them with the market, then quality testing at the farm gate level to ensure that they bring good quality material which meets, the expectations of the corporate, and then lending them in between also, along with some of the other projects which we undertake in terms of training and handholding and doing the financial inclusion. So that's it from my side. Just wanted to keep it crisp.
No, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to give a very capsule sort of overview. I think Arya is another player who is a pioneer, and we look forward to engaging further with you going forward in the work of this committee. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So friends, if you'll just bear with us for 10 more minutes, because I want to close from the voices from the field. We have two of the last speakers, but that's not to say that what they are going to say is any less important. So I'm going to invite Rajnikant, who has worked with Basics, and they help to promote over 300 FPOs in a state like UP. Today, unfortunately, that network is still in a very early stage. But Rajnikant, if you could just share some of your thoughts on what you see as the essential ingredients of unlocking the value not just in the network that you have worked with, but in the larger FPO ecosystem? Rajnikant? Ruchira, is Rajnikant on the link?
Sir, I'll just check. Yes, sir, he's there.
Can you hear me,
Mr.
Rajnikant?
Rajnikant? If you can kindly unmute yourself. Sir, he's there.
Rajnikant, you are on mute, I think.
Sir, wait, we'll give a call to him.
All
I'll
right.
call on his mobile. Yeah.
So I had hoped to close with Venkat Rasa of the Isha Foundation, but I think Venkat, you will have to come in now and briefly sum up Isha's vision on FPOs and some of the successes that you have achieved there in the Deep South. Isha has promoted more than a dozen FPOs, some of whom are doing some incredible work. So Venkat, over to you. Ruchira, Venkat is shown
sir,
on.
Mr. Venkat is also on the call.
Mm-hmm.
He has
Venkat,
logged
can you
in.
hear?
We can see you. Anisha, you would be able to WhatsApp him?
Yes, I'm just doing that now.
Yeah.
Somebody can just call him because I know.
Yeah, so I'm calling Mr. Rajnikant.
No, yeah, he's here.
Mr. Rasa is now online.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Venkat, can you hear me?
Can you please unmute yourself, sir?
Venkat, you're on mute. Can you see the mute button on the bottom? On the left-hand side of the screen at the bottom? Can't hear you, Venkat. We can see you now, but we can't hear you. Sorry, Venkat. You're on, either you're on mute or
log out and then log in again.
Yeah. Is there Aman from IT? Aman, you can help Mr. Venkat?
Okay. Is Rajnikant back on the link? All right, Ruchira, I think we'll just have to, blame Mr. Murphy and, regret that we've not been able to hear.
They're not able to join. Yeah.
And Venkat. Apologies for that, and something beyond our control. Can I just take 2
Sir,
minutes?
are you able to hear
Hello.
me?
Okay,
Hello.
okay, Venkat is wonderful, wonderful.
Prabhas, sir. Yeah, audible, no?
Yes,
Yes,
audible.
Yeah,
So
okay, yeah.
So Rajnikant, you have very, I'm sorry, very little slot, but whatever you can sum up in the next 4 to 5 minutes, we'd like to hear your experience on the UP, UP, and what you've been able to do.
So one part, yeah. So one part which is very clear that after working something around 4 to 5 years on this FPO front, okay, and now this nurturing this FPO federation. So some part which is very clear that okay, in even in the morning today's discussion, a lot of things were there, but I will say we need to identify the need of the farmers. Okay, needs are there in two sides. One is that the FPOs are for whom? It's FPOs are from the consumer side and at the same time from the farmer side. So we need to understand the farmer's need, and I think that. So am I audible now? Hello.
Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah. So what is needed right now that because so FPO need to provide the multiple services. Just take one example. No, still the middleman Aditiyas are very much active because what they do, they provide crops है आपको हम उस crop के लिए input खरीदने के लिए will give you the credit. Okay. once that crop is ready, beforehand, I'll just book your crop. Because, so what is happening, one part I am trying to highlight, that is the credit need, capital, which is very important. Still, sir, I will say, which is not happening. In the morning discussion, Nanda sir has told, out of these 7,000 FPOs, only 2% that even that after giving this SFSC credit guarantee schemes, only 2% FPOs are linked with the bank. Even if you take that, उसमें से देखें कितना nationalized bank से किए गए. It's very it's still, I'll say, and then cost of the capital at the same time. Okay, NBFCs are there. They are coming with the 15%, 18%, 20%. But that we cannot do the business. So one part is that we need to have a low cost and then affordable credit. That is sure that we need it. Without that, this model cannot run, because ये business का model है, we cannot work without capital. Then second thing is that regarding this capacity building, although already that one part even in UP, already that one episode, this training has been done, but especially on this the secondary processing value addition side, वो पूरा का पूरा part missing है. That's where this UP Pro right now, UP Pro is pitching on that side, where that we have not done much work. So one part is that is working on the value addition processing part. One part which is very important, bring a market linkage. So sir, one example I'll give you. Last year when COVID was in the peak, हमारा mango जो मलियाबाद का area है, that already it was about to वो harvest होना था, and then farmers were struggling where to sell. Then in that context, we came out with the online trading. We created app. We created that complete supply chain. We last year something around 5 metric ton of mango has been sold in 2 days. 2 दिन में हम लोगों ने 5 metric ton mango जो है ऑनलाइन ट्रेडिंग करके पूरे दिल्ली और हरियाणा के एरिया में बेचा. Similarly, again that this year we have identified 4 to 5 commodities. One is that scented rice. हमने बोला कि so scented rice, but ultimately the farmers are not getting the right price and the consumer is there. So हमने again we have identified 4 to 5 commodities. That is, one is that scented rice. Okay, you know about this kala namak, which is very valuable. That commodity is there. Then that we have identified this mentha is there. Then TC is there, linseed is there. So right now again we have identified this 4 to 5 commodity, trying to develop the supply chain, and that we are trying to link directly this consumer and the farmers, and trying to give them better price for the farmers. So what I am trying to say, one part which is very important to strengthen the FPO, that is capital is very important. Provide them a market linkage, bringing that technology. Without technology, we cannot do anything. Only technology can give you the competitive advantage. It's sure. So we need to bring the technology which can help in the market linkage, which can help in the production productivity enhancement. So this is the kind of that. Then convergence with the different, what are the government schemes are there. Bring that all that schemes within this this portfolio of these FPOs. At the same time, that all that how to bring the local leadership, educate them, train them. At the same time, also how to attract the new generation, that professionals, skilled manpower into this sector. Because without skilled manpower, without skilled resources, we cannot run this sourcer. It's very important, because it's not a SAG, it's a complete business game. It's a completely different kind of ball game, where we need a good brain, we need a young generation. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Rajnikant. Again, sorry for squeezing your time, but your thoughts, as always, based on your field experience, so valuable. Thank you again. I promise you we will engage with you regularly on the task force, and a lot of what you've done and what you said is exactly, I think, what is required going ahead. So thanks again for your time. Venkat, if you are now able to log on, can you just please, in the next 5 minutes, you are the final speaker. People have been very patient and they've stayed on. So if you could briefly summarize Isha's experience as a promoting institution, and what do you see as the essential ingredients of strengthening FPOs going forward? Over to you, Venkat. Have we lost Venkat again?
I think so, sir.
We lost Venkat again. Okay. Now I won't. I think.
No, he's there. No, he's there. Sometimes the headset, when we use it, I think something they need to do it with their settings.
Yeah.
Actually,
He unmuted himself, but still would not speak.
Yeah, he's there.
Venkat, can you try speaking without your headset? Remove the headset and just speak using the computer mic.
Looks he is joined from the mobile, sir.
Oh. But even that.
Yeah, he's logged off now.
Okay, we'll take an IOU for hearing Venkat again. Of course, we'll engage again with him. I think I could say no more except to say that it has been such a overwhelmingly rich discussion and so many thoughts by so many practitioners from different segments, FPOs, promoting institutions, resource institutions, and the private sector. I think the agenda of the task force is really cut out for this institution, for this platform. And I promise that we will have thematic and very in-depth discussions going forward on each and many more themes. So thank you, Fiki, for putting this center stage. I think it's very timely that we should be collaborating at the level of ideas, because we need to take the knowledge from the field in a very organized way to the concerned solution providers, and not all the solutions are going to come from the government. The government is a major player. The government has taken a few steps, but I believe that in this sphere, the kind of networks and relationships that we can engender between FPOs and the market players, between resource institutions and FPOs, and above everything, I think continuous dialogue, continuous collaboration. That's going to be the mantra that our task force will promote. Since I'm also associated with NAFPO, on behalf of NAFPO, can I say thank you to all the participants. Thank you also to Fiki for giving this platform. We're looking forward to a very intense year of work ahead, and hopefully some very tangible solutions emerging from these dialogues. So thanks again. And if the Fiki staff members want to say anything in conclusion, from my side, thanks again for your wonderful participation.
Yeah. Sir, thank you, really. Thank you so much. On behalf of Fiki, I would like to thank all the speakers, panelists. And so you very rightly said that this virtual conference, or say the curtain raiser to the task force, will really help us in guiding and building separate brainstorming sessions going forward. We will have an intense year ahead, breaking into different topics that are required for empowering the FPOs and also on the policy prescription sides to the government. With you as a chair, sir, we look forward to intense work being done in the FPO sector by the Fiki. With these words, sir, thank you so much, and thank you all the speakers and all the delegates who joined in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.